Hello, my name is Erica Schmiel. I'm the Public Policy Associate for the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance. The Alliance is a member of the Minnesota Consortium for Citizens with Disabilities. The top legislative priority for the Alliance and the Consortium this coming legislative session is medical assistance reform. Medical assistance, or MA, is important to people with disabilities because it provides access to home and community-based services called waiver services that are necessary for independent living in the community. The problem is the income and asset standards set by the state to qualify for MA are just too low, and they force adults and seniors with disabilities into poverty to remain independent. Just how low are these standards? The MA income standard for adults and seniors with disabilities in the state of Minnesota today is equal to the poverty level, or $973 a month. In addition, the asset standard is $3,000. That means you cannot have any savings over $3,000. Now, while this asset standard excludes a home and a car, that standard has not changed since 1983, so it is so low that it is almost impossible to maintain them if you do own a home or a car. Now, for people above the poverty level, they are still able to access medical assistance if they meet a spend-down standard, and that standard is $729 a month. What this means is if a person with a disability makes even $1 over the poverty level, he or she is expected to pay all their waiver services until they are left with just $729 a month to live on before MA starts paying. Now, I want to emphasize the spend-down concept is good, but the spend-down standard is just too low. It is very difficult for people with disabilities to meet their basic needs, including housing, food, transportation, living on $729 a month. In addition, it's impossible for them to get ahead with $3,000 in savings. Additionally, when they can't meet their spend down, the providers of those support services must absorb the cost themselves, or they're forced to discontinue those needed services to people with disabilities. Another problem with medical assistance is that it holds people with disabilities to different qualifying standards than other adults on MA. Adults without disabilities on MA are able to make $1,342 a month and have no asset limits. While we understand that the adults in this category do not have a spend-down option and they don't have access to waiver services, we believe this huge disparity needs to be addressed. Medical assistance reform is complex, but our message is simple. Medical assistance reform supports independence, increases cost effectiveness, promotes equity, and stabilizes services. Medical assistance reform is long overdue, and we need your help this session to succeed in our medical assistance reform campaign. If you or a loved one have a medical assistance story, if you're subject to the spend down, if you're impacted by those low income and asset standards, call the Minnesota Consortium for Citizens with Disabilities and join our MA reform campaign. We need to share your story with policymakers so they understand the real impact that this medical assistance policy has on the lives of adults and seniors living with disabilities. During the 2015 session, we are proposing medical assistance reform that will raise that spend down standard to the same level as the MA qualifying income standard and increase the income and asset standards for seniors and adults with disabilities to a more reasonable level. This session, we know there's going to be a surplus. Contact the governor, contact legislative leaders,